All right, moving on to culture. So, naturally, culture has had a fairly strong term under Right and Legend, in my opinion. So, in a wider scheme, what is the best way to turn a strong term to the region's advantage? And are we currently in a position to make best use of strong terms in culture? Calvin?
Okay, I will first off agree that yes, this has been a good term because of Writing Legend and his work in culture and his staff. So yes, I think it is fair to say that. Carrot. The next part, yeah, we're definitely in a good position to take advantage of the culture that we have because we've been doing that. We'll continue to do it in future terms, and I dare say we'll do it better when one of us is elected president. Wink. But the thing with culture is that I mean, we're never not in a good position to take advantage of it because we've got so many people that really care about the region, care about having fun, and caring about all the different little projects that we have. That really, we to really not take advantage of that is a big failure on the part of the administration, and should be almost second nature at this point. I think there was also a first part of the question that I missed. Could you repeat the question? I don't want to miss anything.
Oh, it was a seemed to be answering it pretty well. It's culture strong term. What is the best way to turn a strong term to the region's advantage? And are we in a position to make best use of such terms?
Okay, so to turn it to the region's advantage, we have to, I think I've said this in my answers from previous questions, we have to, how good we have it in Europia. So we have our dispatches for a reason. We'll dispatch a lot of our weekend game scores and screenshots from different games when we have a festival going on, or even something smaller than a festival, like we've got or something going on. We've seen effective uses of a lot of those culture initiatives benefit for workout in Euros benefit, I should say, because basically anything that shows Europia in a good light and shows that we have active people and that care about us is culture can extend into so many different other areas that currently aren't being utilized, and it's a real shame.
CSP?
Yeah, I think a large part of my culture policy also ties into our foreign policy, and I think that's a theme throughout much of my platform that you'll see. You're going to see the government working to encourage certain types of activity that we can then package and send out into the wider world that advertises what Europia does best and why our community is so unique. I think both Calvin and I agreed that a large factor in our cultural success and where a lot of the opportunities lie are in the weekend games. And we both have stated that a priority will be incorporating foreign visitors into those games. I also think that we need to go further by introducing newer games on a more regular basis. People absolutely enjoy Town of Salem, and I am absolutely not saying that we're getting rid of Town of Salem, but we've been playing Town of Salem for 2 or 3 years now, right? Maybe that one doesn't need to be played every weekend. I also think that a great opportunity to showcase Europia's citizens is a reinvigorated interest in the Aurora Art Gallery and the Writer's Block. Over the years, we've seen that Europeans are really talented people and really creative people. And the things that we can create when we decide that that's what we're interested in are worth sharing with everybody else. And if you've spent any time elsewhere, you know that writing and creative pursuits are a pretty common interest in the rest of the world. So I think using more contests and incorporating those type of activities into larger cultural festivals in the place of spam games will be something that we can then use to either compile or broadcast and then push that out to other regions to help us get even more new and creative members here to our region.
All right, that actually is a fairly good lever onto the
actually,
next.
Garrett,
Oh,
I,
yes.
I don't know what the next question is, but I'd like to respond if I can.
Please do.
So, first off, I want to state that Town of Salem is not currently played every week. We have a rotation of games that we have. So, while searching for new games is important and it is an endeavor that all culture should have a good library of games right now, we have enough that we have rotations every 2 weeks. We're trying to get it to work so it's about 3 weeks rotation before we play the same game again, but it doesn't always work out that well. We don't always have radio hosts to do trivia, that sort of thing. So our current game lineup is not as tired and worn out as I think CSP is suggesting.
Okay, well, I don't think I'm suggesting that it's worn out. I'm simply saying that we can make more robust efforts to inject new stuff into there more often. And I also think that we can have special gaming events that can supplement that I think will make for some really interesting opportunities to stream gameplay.
I also wanted to address your point of contests, if I can. The contest route has been tried many different times since I've been here, at least. We've had contests in the Aurora Art Gallery. We've had contests in the Writer's Block, both areas that you mentioned that were horrible failures. And I'm not saying that it'll never work in the future, and I'm not saying that we don't have talented artists. I'm not saying we don't have talented writers. We clearly do. I just feel like contests is the wrong way to approach that. I think a lot of those areas would be better addressed if we just appointed the director and let their ideas run free in that area. We've seen that work, I think, in different areas in the past where we've had just natural come up of ideas. People are saying, okay, I'm writing a story and I want people to play along with this. And then people are like, oh, that's so cool. I want to play along in the story. And like we had Seven Deaths start his Choose Your Own Adventure story. People were really hyped about that. Obviously, we would take those and continue them if they start to falter, or we have different writers who come up with like poems or different things like that. We had a haiku challenge and things like that, and those didn't work, right? Because people aren't as motivated to do those contests. So I feel like pursuing contests in particular would be the wrong.
I think there are a lot of different ways to do contests, and I'm very excited about the individual I've tapped to be my culture minister, who is undoubtedly one of the most creative folks in our region and has extensive experience in other regions, which frankly do certain aspects of the culture game better than we do. So I'm looking forward to the unique ideas he can bring to the table that might make some of those efforts that you talked about more successful.
So we do see a lot of talk about how the Culture Hub is underused, and I'm interested in your thoughts as to why it is underused. And you've both mostly addressed what is needed to bring a change back to using it. Just want to see what your thoughts on why it's underused, and I guess we're starting with CSP.
That goes back to really a common theme, that it's not being prioritized. That's not to say that there aren't great priorities coming out of the culture ministry, because there are. Okay, let's not oversimplify what I'm saying here. I think that being president and being a good minister is about setting priorities, and I think that the priorities I've put forth are both more specific and more readily attainable than the ones Calvin have put together. He identifies 4 priorities. One, we're 100% agreed on, which is the incorporation of foreign visitors into weekend games, excuse me. The others, frankly, befuddle me a little bit, and if they're the top priorities, it doesn't put a lot of confidence on any sort of vision for culture in the next term under Calvin. Survivor is one of his 4 priorities, a program that has already been defined, is underway, and is successful. The other is to bolster Religion Row, which is essentially a minor role-playing, borderline spam part of our forum. And the other is to plan an interregional festival that is in no way defined. He hasn't told us anything about what the goals are, who might be involved, what a theme might be. A major plank of his culture platform is to simply have an interregional festival, and I don't think that measures up. If we're going to be talking about having specific plans, I think that's a bit of a fallacious characterization that's seemed to take hold.
Galvin?
Could you repeat the question, Garrett? I just want to clarify we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, so I was saying we see a lot of talk about the underutilization of the Culture Hub. What are your thoughts on why it is underutilized and what is needed to bring about a change that brings it back to the fore?
Yeah, that's what I thought the question was, which is interesting. Why CSP kind of just attacked my platform instead. So to specifically address the cultural hub, I think the reason right now that it's not being utilized is if we look at what the cultural hub is, if we just go down the row here, it's roleplay and it's spam, art, writer, writer's block, talking about theater, and talking about games. So if we look at all of those different things, Euro kind of already does a lot of those on their own, but not necessarily in those areas. The ones that I think are the most active are definitely the spam zone and religions row. To specifically address religion, as somebody who's been really involved in the religion row from basically the start, I find CSP's characterization as a slightly role-play area that is mostly spam-based and therefore is something that is minor and should be ignored. You'd kind of be like, if we're looking at what the culture of the region is, in his own platform, he talks about how roleplay is something that we shouldn't ignore. And then he talks about religion as really one of the few places we've seen roleplay work and saying that should be discounted and we shouldn't use that.
That's not an accurate characterization of what I said.
About. So if you want to respond, I guess you can respond.
Yeah, I think that's a mischaracterization of what I said. I find it odd that in trying to find 4 priorities, that was that close to the top. I didn't say that the religions row is useless. I said that I don't think it warrants top billing in a presidential platform, and I think it's indicative of a lack of direction.
Well, if we want to talk about top billing, like after weekend games, which is something we both agree is something that is the priority, right? That's our first top billing for both of us. Your next priority after weekend games is talking about those contests in the writer's block and Aurora Art Gallery, which, you've already kind of talked about, like, I've talked about why they don't work. And then your response is basically like, well, they might. And then if they don't, then we'll do something else. Like, that's basically the lack of vision right there. Like, I have a plan for religion row and those sort of things that has been shown to work in the past. Yours is not.
Interesting. A European debate where we have some contention.
So the only other part of your culture platform is roleplay that we haven't really talked about. If you don't think that religion should get top billing in that area, what should?
Yeah, sure. I think that roleplay has struggled, put it mildly, over the years. And I think that we can put some effort into creating role plays that are more akin to simulations, to where a great deal of customization is present in the role play or game, whatever you want to call it, that you're playing. But these theme simulations, role plays, won't require the traditional amount of time and writing that role plays often do. And I think that it's an approach that makes it easier and more fun. I would like to do a sort of like Game of Thrones role play or something like that, but I'm not really interested in writing a book about it. So if we can use the Culture Ministry to sort of set up these simulations, allow folks to customize characters and places, what have you. And then the Culture Ministry helps that process play out, moves the narrative along. So I think by making it easier to do, we have a lot of common interests in this region that we should be using to do those kinds of things.
I feel like simulation roleplay would be a mistake to pursue because we've seen it fail so many times in the past. Okay, I'll give you an example of one, the sports roleplay. The European Premier League was a sports simulation game that had, when it started, a fair amount of interest and really has failed to go anywhere due to a lack of user activity, for instance.
Okay, well, I'm not.
If we want to talk about role plays that work, I think really the only role play we've seen work on a long scale has been from religion and that sort of thing, because it's something that doesn't take a lot of effort from that many people, and it's kind of easy to just jump in whenever. If you have something that you're basically starting from scratch, that's a simulation role play. You have to have so many factors and so many users kind of jump in from the start and sustain it that it hasn't really worked. So I just don't. How are these simulation role plays really going to work?
I mean, what more do you need? The Culture Ministry designs a simulation, and then players customize whatever content is going to be customizable. Hopefully, it will be heavily customizable. And then the Culture Ministry takes an active role in guiding the story throughout the process. Okay, instead of leaving folks to make up their own narrative throughout. I don't accept the premise that just because something similar has been tried before, once or twice, then it's something that we, would be a waste of time to do. And again, I'm not trying to discount the activity that comes from Religions Row. I'm really not. I'm just saying I don't see how that content can be used to advertise our regional culture. That's all, as opposed to other components of that culture. And that's why I want to emphasize the art gallery and the writer's block. And, the ultimate goal isn't the contest. The ultimate goal is getting that content so we can push it out. If there's a better way to do it than contests, then I'm certainly open to talking about that.
Well, I feel like to address the point about religion not being used for advertising regional culture, I'd say it's pretty much one of the few things we can point to as like organic role play regional culture that's grown up and sustained for years. To not tap into that, I think, would be a mistake. I also want to address that I don't think that going after these role plays because they've failed once or twice is something that we should get in the habit of saying like, well, it failed once or twice, so it shouldn't be pursued. I think the way that it's going to be pursued again is something that we've seen fail.